Hey y'all, it's Texan Reacts, and we're going to be checking out something from a channel I have not reacted to yet. It's called Geography Geek, and it looks like he's got a lot of really cool videos over there, and I want to react to some of them. This one is Why Doesn't the U.S. Know About Its Own Dutch Origins? And I've heard a few of them because in our Discord we have a huge Dutch contingent of members, and they've let us know um, just a few of the things that we kind of took from the Dutch or the connections we have to the Netherlands. And it's really surprising. And I don't know why the U.S. doesn't know much about it. Um, but yeah, this is a new channel for me, Geography Geek. There'll be a link down below. Please go check out his stuff if you enjoy this. Go over there, watch a bunch of his videos. Let me know which ones you want me to react to. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of go with this one. It's his most recent. And yeah, let's go.
A couple months ago, I made a video on why I thought the Dutch had an underestimated impact on American history and the defining characteristics and values of the country today. This was done primarily through the Dutch colony of New Netherland and its settlement of New Amsterdam that served as the seat of the colonial government. This video is kind of part 2 to that one, so if you haven't watched that video yet, I've left a link in the description below.
Oh,
Most
I know the next one then.
Americans know little more about their Dutch past other than that the Dutch once occupied Manhattan, and the legend that Peter Minuit bought Manhattan from the natives for $24 worth of household goods or seashells.
What?
But even that story has its issues.
What?
The details surrounding the story suggest inaccuracies, questionable sources, and at a minimum, a misunderstanding between the parties involved.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the theme of this video. Why is the US left with this one story? And a sketchy one at that. Why doesn't the United States know about its own Dutch origins? But before I get too far into it, first, I want to share a little part of my life outside of YouTube. One of my hobbies before YouTube was creating decorative maps of my favorite places. So back in the summer of 2018, I started an online map shop called Zach's Map Shop. Like my videos, they can be a bit random. A large portion of the maps are American national parks, but I'm slowly widening the range of maps available.
Cool.
I
I'm
also
really
sell
into maps
historical
too.
prints now, not just my original designs. Most of my products are maps printed on high quality poster paper, but I also sell other items such as stickers, notebooks, and coffee cups.
Actually, I have a 3 historical maps on my walls in my living room. Texas ones, of course. But yeah, I like maps too.
With Christmas just months away, if you're looking for something unique for a family member or friend, or you're like me and just like to decorate your own home with maps, come check out my shop. I deeply appreciate any purchases, as it helps support me and this channel. You can check me out on Etsy or at my website at zaxmapshop.com. Now back to this video's topic.
There we
The
go.
United States isn't ignorant of its Dutch past because it chose to be, but its main former colonizer, the British, probably were. The United States just inherited the ignorance. The Netherlands and Britain had a long-lasting rivalry over dominance of global trade. 4 wars occurred between England and later Great Britain in the 17th and 18th centuries, with the last coinciding with the American Revolution. In 1664, New Netherland and its seat of government, New Amsterdam, was taken from the Dutch by the English. And though the Dutch are generally considered to have won the war that immediately followed, the Second Anglo-Dutch War, the Dutch didn't push for New Amsterdam's return. They were satisfied with keeping what was thought to be a more valuable and formerly British colony, the newly seized Suriname. New Netherland and its seat of government, New Amsterdam, were changed to the province of New York and New York City by the British, and it would stay in their hands for over a century. The region's history was essentially reset. An excerpt from a journal belonging to an 18th century Virginia gentleman named William Byrd II, I believe displays this English attitude and bias against the Dutch. He wrote this in 1728, as he and a party of surveyors drew the border between the colonies of Virginia and North Carolina. Another limb lopped off from Virginia was New York, which the Dutch seized very unfairly, on pretense of having purchased it from Captain Hudson, the first discoverer. Nor was their way of taking possession of it a whit more justifiable than their pretended title. Their West India Company tampered with some worthy English skippers, who had contracted with a swarm of English dissenters to transport them to Hudson River. by no means to land them there, but to carry them some leagues more northerly. This Dutch finesse took exactly, and gave the company time soon after to seize Hudson River for themselves. But Sir Samuel Argall, then governor of Virginia, understanding how the king's subjects had been abused by these Republicans, marched thither with a good force, and obliged them to renounce all pretensions to that country. The worst of it was, the knight depended on their parole to ship themselves for Brazil, but took no measures to make this slippery people as good as their word. No sooner was the good governor retired, but the honest Dutch began to build forts and strengthen themselves in their ill-gotten possessions. Nor did any of the king's liege people take the trouble to drive these intruders thence. The civil war in England and the confusions it brought forth allowed no leisure for such distant considerations, though it is strange that the Protector, who neglected no occasion to mortify the Dutch, did not afterwards call them to account for this breach of faith. However, after the Restoration, the king sent a squadron of his ships of war under the command of Sir Robert Carr, and reduced that province to his obedience. Some time after, his Majesty was pleased to grant that country to His Royal Highness, the Duke of York, by letters patent dated March the 12th, 1664. But to show the modesty of the Dutch to the life, though they had no shadow of right to New York, yet they demanded Suriname, a more valuable country, as an equivalent for it, and our able ministers at the time had the generosity to give it them. Looking at this excerpt, it appears not just New Netherland, but really anything considered a Dutch success was probably suppressed. This includes the Second and Third Anglo-Dutch Wars, which played significant roles in American history, but are rarely talked about. In 1667, the Netherlands attacked my home state of Virginia at the mouth of the James River as part of the Second Anglo-Dutch War. I've lived in Virginia my entire life, and didn't know this until a few weeks ago when a friend of mine told me that while doing some genealogical research, discovered that one of his ancestors had been killed by a cannonball during the conflict. The fleet that attacked Virginia was led by Abraham Cranston, the same admiral who just months earlier had taken the British colony of Suriname. The Dutch returned to attack at Hampton Roads in the Third Anglo-Dutch War as well. But colonists slowly stopped identifying as Englishmen, and resentment towards the British eventually grew. Independence was declared in 1776 and officially achieved in 1783, which the Dutch actually helped the U.S. achieve.
I've heard of that. Look, he's got a video.
A video about this as well. At this
that's another one I definitely want to check out. This is really interesting.
Americans, having a shared resentment of the British, would have probably been more open to accepting their Dutch history. But after over a century of being a British colony, the Americans naturally inherited the history that was taught, and the most commonly spoken and written language was English, making it difficult to read anything from a Dutch perspective. And English remained by far the most common language in the following 2 centuries after gaining independence, even though today citizens with a majority English ancestry may make up as little as 7.8% of the U.S. population.
Wow.
On top of this,
that little? Man, that's amazing.
The Dutch language had evolved over those 2 centuries of English rule, adding another barrier to reading historic documents left by New Netherland. New Netherland left behind 12,000 pages of letters, deeds, wills, journal entries, council minutes, and court proceedings, but no one knew what they said. In 1801, a committee headed by, who would later be U.S. Vice President to Thomas Jefferson, Aaron Burr, declared that measures ought to be taken to procure a translation, but none were. In the 1820s, a half-blind Dutchman who was not very proficient in English translated the documents, though it was poorly done. Nevertheless, a 1911 fire destroyed the New York State Library along with his translation.
Oh, man.
In the early 20th century, a highly skilled translator undertook the task, but after 2 years of dedication, his translation also burned up in the same fire, after which he abandoned the task. Finally, in 1974, a man named Charles Gehring began translating the documents. Later, a woman named Yanni Venema joined him, and together have translated over 7,000 of the 12,000 original documents, revealing the lives of New Netherlands inhabitants, and the impact they had on what would become New York and the United States. On a side note, I think this highlights how difficult it can be to be unbiased when you are limited to sources in one language, and it's something I struggle with on this channel. Essays, journals, and books have been written in the last few decades based on these translations. Several of my videos, including this one, took a lot of information from Russell Shorto's the island at the center of the world, which I highly recommend. But this is still relatively new information, so it hasn't quite made it into many states' school curriculum. Take a look at my home state of Virginia. This is from a high school class called U.S. History to 1865. Only the English colonies are mentioned, leaving an entire geographic gap as if New York didn't exist. And only the Spanish, French, and English are mentioned as exploring North America.
Huh.
The Dutch are mentioned once in the Virginia U.S. History class, but it just vaguely states that Dutch-speaking immigrants came to the area. Above that, it falsely states that the Puritans were seeking freedom from religious persecution in Europe, though they already had religious freedom in the Netherlands before coming to the colonies. It then goes on to state that
Yeah, that's what we're taught. That Puritans came here based on a freedom of religion. Interesting.
the middle colonies were home to multiple religious groups who generally believed in religious tolerance, including Quakers in Pennsylvania, Huguenots, and Jews in New York. Yes, there were Jews that came to New York, but only because of New Amsterdam and the tolerance that came with being a Dutch colony, though Peter Stuyvesant wasn't a fan. The one state that does appear to recognize the role that the Dutch have played in American history is, of course, New York, especially in more recent times. In 1915, New York City adopted a flag influenced by the flag of the Dutch Republic and used in New Amsterdam. The seal at its center has an image of a windmill. 3 windmills had been built in New Amsterdam.
Oh, wow.
There is also a beaver, the trade of which was one of the main reasons for the Dutch colonization of the region. In 1977,
And a yo-yo, I see. They like to walk the dog back then.
New York City changed the year on its seal from 1664, the year the English took New Amsterdam, to 1625, the year that New Amsterdam was designated the seat of government for New Netherland. New York State has a 7th grade class called New York U.S. History that emphasizes the influence the Dutch had on New York and the United States as a whole. And maybe just like culture always has in the U.S., this will eventually spread outward from New York across the entire United States. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe
over?
for more geography videos.
Oh, cool.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That the Dutch came first, at least before England, and once England took over, they just kind of erased it. Surprised they didn't burn up all those documents that are being translated. But yeah, they I was gonna say earlier, to the victors go the spoils, or they get to rewrite history. The victors do, but it sounds like the Dutch may have won anyways and just didn't push the issue. Very interesting. These other videos that he mentioned, I want to check out, like especially with the independence one right here, and yeah, that's really neat. A lot of information kind of packed in there, really tight. I like it. So yeah, if y'all like it, please like this video and definitely go check out his channel and watch some of his videos. And please subscribe to my channel. I appreciate the support. And check out the Discord. The link is down below. And come say hello. Till next time, rock on.